And welcome into a new hour of CBS Sports HQ. I'm Amanda Guerra with you. We are about to give you picks for all the ranked games coming up this week in college football over the next hour, including the SEC on CBS, where, yes, fans on a Tuesday already parked around the stadium getting ready for Saturday's game. It's Georgia, Florida.
It's one of the most passionate rivalries in all of college football, and it's going down Saturday afternoon in Jacksonville. The top-ranked Georgia Bulldogs clashing with the Florida Gators. The two schools have gone head-to-head in Jacksonville since 1933, and it's always intense. There was Steve Spurrier and the Heisman curse. Run, Lindsey, run.
45-40, run, Lindsey.
Then Herschel Walker went over the top next year. The Gator stomp. And Urban Meyer getting his revenge the following year, even burning all his timeouts in the final minute. As far as this year goes, the Dogs, led by their ferocious defense, are locked in on trying to win their first national title since 1980. But head coach Kirby Smart knows they can't overlook a talented Florida team.
This game's not about rankings, never been about rankings. It's a rival game. Our kids understand that it's not about records.
As for the Florida Gators, it's been a disappointing year thus far, sitting at 4-3, but they love nothing more than to ruin Georgia's perfect season.
It's the second time we're going to play the number one team in the same season. That doesn't happen very often. That's why our guys, they'll get juice for this.
It's the Dogs and the Gators in the SEC Game of the Week. Will Georgia continue to dominate on both sides of the ball, or can Florida pull off the massive upset? We're in for a good one Saturday on CBS.
Let's welcome in a couple of our experts. We have Brady Quinn with me here on set. Danny Kanell not here today, but he is at home joining us. So we get the number one team in the country in Georgia going up against unranked Florida. I was serious when I said, so they have RV City here. It's Tuesday. As of yesterday, RVs are already parked around the stadium trying to get into this parking lot. Georgia is a 14-point favorite on the road. The total here is 51. Danny, you're not with us. Why don't you start?
All right, I'll go ahead, Amanda. This is what used to be known as the greatest cocktail party on the earth, and it's still, they don't call it that anymore, but trust me, they still take pride in their ability to celebrate this game. It's one of the better rivalries in sports, so not surprising at all. Those RVs are there. There's a lot of unknowns about this game. Who's going to play quarterback for Georgia? Is it going to be Stetson Bennett, or are we going to see the return of JT Daniels? With a bye week, does Florida make a switch to Anthony Richardson, or is it Emory Jones? But the one constant that we do know is Georgia's defense is going to show up. But rivalry game, bye week after an atrocious performance in Baton Rouge, I actually like the Gators here. As long as this is over 14 points, 14 and a half, I'll go ahead and take those points. This is the best opponent that talent-wise that Georgia has faced all year, probably since Clemson. I know they've had some tough opponents. In Kentucky was a tough out, but they don't have the athletes that Florida has. I think you'll get Florida's best effort in this game, and that effort, I think, will come on the defensive side of the ball. And in a couple of quarterbacks, whether it's Anthony Richardson or it's Emory Jones, they'll both be running the football, which does present some problems in the run game. That being said, I don't think you see these teams going up and down the field on each other. Georgia might have some offensive success against Florida. So what I like better than Florida getting the 14 points is the under. I think this will be a slugfest, as it typically is. I think you'll see a lower scoring game. I think Georgia still wins, maybe by 10, but I think it's under the 51 total.
Lock unity. I mean, there's really not much more I can add to this, given the book that Danny just wrote on this game. And he kind of talked about the quarterback rushing attack for Florida and really how that could play a factor going up against this Georgia defense that, look, it's the best in the country. No one's going to dispute that. But it's much more difficult when you have to deal with a running quarterback that has the skill set of Emory Jones or Anthony Richardson. I'm more interested, though, on the other side, because I think where this could go awry, at least as far as against the spread, is the rushing attack of Georgia that has gotten better and better and better as the years gone on, going up against a Florida defense that has just struggled. In particular, I've just still got flashes of LSU running all over this Florida defense. So I'm with Danny. I feel much better about the under in this case than I do the actual spread. But 14 points for a rivalry game, one of which I do think, as far as the skill set and talent of the players in the field is pretty equal, I'll take the 14 points.
Lock unity for the very first pick. I like it. All right, last week we did not have any ranked games. That all changes this week. We have a bunch, including number 10, Ole Miss, at number 18, Auburn. Auburn just a slight favorite at home by 2.5. Total here is 66. What's your play?
I'll gladly take the points here in Ole Miss in this one. Look, I think Matt Corral is one of the better quarterbacks in all of college football. And it seems like time and time again, he puts this team on his back and finds a way of winning football games. They're also balanced when you look at what they're able to do offensively. And I just haven't bought into Auburn this year. Bo Nix has flashed at times, creating and making some big plays, just not often enough. I mean, they really have to rely on that rushing attack. I think DJ Durkin and the defense for Ole Miss is going to sell out, stop the run, force this game to be on Bo Nix, and I think they're going to have a hard time keeping pace with Ole Miss. So I'll gladly take the 2.5 points. This one to me, though, again, at 66 as far as the total, I like the under. I just don't see quite as much scoring in this one, Danny.
I agree with you on the total. I think you'll see Auburn with a pretty strong defensive effort, at least to slow down that Ole Miss offense, which has been built so much around Matt Corral. But it's been the running backs recently that have really gotten the show going for Ole Miss. Last weekend, you had Jerrion Ely and Stoop Connor both have really impressive performances where Matt Corral didn't get to throw for yardage all over the field. I think Bo Nix had a breakout type of game in their last game against Arkansas. They won by 15. They won comfortably against a good opponent from the SEC West. So I actually favor the home team here. But every time you kind of gamble on Bo Nix and say, hey, you see the upside of him, he springs a game at you that just is like, what the heck did I just watch? So I'm not as confident on that one. Although I do think they'll be able to establish the run against Ole Miss's defense, which is shaky and suspect as it's been all year long, which means they're keeping the ball away from Ole Miss. And I think Ole Miss realizing, okay, we can have a more balanced attack than just slinging it all over the field. I think they're slowed down somewhat too. So I'll go under here, but I do like the Auburn Tigers as the home favorite.
Either way, you guys both like the under there. We have the battle of the Paul Bunyan Trophy and this next one, Michigan State. Brady, you're going to be at this game. What can we expect, do you think?
A lot of running the football. I mean, look, these are two of the better running football teams in the Big Ten. You got the combination of Blake Corum, Hassan Haskins for Michigan, who've been awesome together. A great 1-2 combination. Two very different styles of running backs. You got the Heisman candidate, Kenneth Walker III, who really does it all for Michigan State. The issue for this matchup for me is I think when you look at the two schedules these teams have played, neither has really been challenged that much. So you kind of have to dive in and say, okay, Michigan on the road versus that stingy Wisconsin defense. They found ways to create some big plays and be able to win there. I think that's a little bit of an edge too. And then, we haven't seen Cade McNamara asked to do a ton. I do think Michigan State will force him to do more in this one, but I just have some reservations about Michigan State's ability to stop the rushing attack of Michigan. Michigan State, as far as their offensive line, I think they could be potentially exposed, trying to stop the defensive front, in particular, Aiden Hutchinson off the edge for Michigan. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the 4.5 points here. And I also think this game has a little bit more scoring than we're accustomed to between these two teams. So I like the over of that 51 total in this one, Danny.
Uh-oh, man. We got our first massive disagreement on the show today because I'm on opposite sides of both on this one. Not with a lot of confidence, though. I mean, both of these teams, the schedules have been light. I know Michigan got the win against Washington. Michigan State got the win against Miami earlier in their non-conference, but neither team has really been tested that much. I know Michigan went to Nebraska, and that was a nice win, but I just don't know what I'm going to get out of both of them. I do know you're going to get two teams that want to run the football, and I do know one thing that we've learned from this year, it's hard to trust road favorites in this crazy football season we've seen where the unknown has happened. We've seen top 25 teams knocked off. So I trust Michigan State playing at home a little bit more. I still like Michigan to win this game, but in a rivalry game, I think it'll go down to the wire, maybe a field goal type finish. But I'll take the points for the home dog here in this spot. And then Brady alluded to it. Both teams want to establish the run. Michigan with Blake Corum, the duo of Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins, two better running backs. And then you got one of the best running backs in the Big Ten that's not named Travion Henderson and Kenneth Walker III. But both quarterbacks, the epitome of game managers. There might be some big plays in there, but I don't trust either one to just go out there and light up either side. I think this might be a game where the one or big play may actually be the difference in the outcome, and who hits on that one or two big plays will be the difference in the game. So I'm going to lean towards the under on the total as well.
Yeah, if you look at Michigan State, both Reed and Naylor on the outside, those are kind of the big play targets for Michigan State's offense. We've seen that. And for Michigan, it's more Cornelius Johnson. They'll mix in some other players. But the crazy thing to me is Cade McNamara, the quarterback for Michigan, he averages the fewest attempts per game in the fourth quarter of any starting quarterback in the Big Ten. So to Danny's point, he really hasn't been challenged this year. He's only thrown 6 pass attempts while trailing. So if that gives you any indication of how much they've dominated their schedule this year, as far as point differential, all those things you look into, he hasn't felt that pressure. Can Michigan State at home as an underdog put that pressure on his shoulders and force Cade McNamara to beat him with his arm? We haven't seen anyone really ask him to do that quite yet. So that's going to be the challenge. But again, I still think Michigan laying the points takes care of business in this one.
Danny, let's start with you on this next one. We get Penn State at Ohio State. Penn State now ranked 20th. They dropped 13 spots after that 9-overtime loss to Illinois. So Ohio State favored in this one by 18 and a hook. The total here is 60. Danny, what do you think about this game?
This kind of goes back to the philosophy of you can't trust anything this year. Like you would expect, Ohio State's going to take Penn State just to the woodshed and absolutely blow them out, which may happen. But Ohio State's been getting things clicking on all cylinders. Their offense has looked awesome, but it hasn't exactly been a gauntlet that they've played since the Oregon game. The opponents they've been blowing through, including Indiana this last weekend. The defense, to me, is still a little bit suspect with the changes they've made. And athletically, this will be the most talented team that they have faced. So similar to kind of what I was talking about Florida and Georgia earlier in the game, this will be Ohio State's best test. Now, I think Ohio State passes that test, especially playing at home. But Penn State, I hope they're playing angry. Like there's a chance this might be one where you want to watch the first quarter and take a live bet because James Franklin, rumors flying around there. He's switching agents. Is he going to USC, which I think is probably the eventual outcome. I'm curious to where this Penn State team is after that devastating, embarrassing overtime loss at home, 9-overtime loss at home, where they are. But Sean Clifford, another week to get healthy. He clearly looked like he was still impacted by that injury last week against Illinois. I think they'll have a little bit of a better opportunity to establish the run against Ohio State. In all of it, though, I like the over because we know Ohio State. I think they're going to put up a lot of points. But I think Penn State with Jahan Dotson will hit on a couple big plays against an Ohio State secondary, which really hasn't been tested at all. So I'll take Penn State and I'll also take the over.
No, Danny. You haven't been watching your film, buddy. Look, don't be so impressed by what we've seen the past few weeks from this Ohio State offense. Yes, C.J. Stroud has looked phenomenal. He's been throwing the football around. That's because he's had a clean pocket. When he's under pressure, when he's getting hit under duress, he struggles a little bit. I think you're going to find a lot of that versus Penn State this week. They've got the secondary, maybe the best to match up with that talented Ohio State wide receiver group, and they've got the ability to rush against C.J. Stroud, put pressure on him, which he does not like. So if Ohio State struggles to run the football versus this group, which I think they will with those talented linebackers at Penn State, I think we're going to see a low-scoring game. I actually love the under in this better than anything else, but the fact that it's Ohio State giving 18.5 points to a Penn State team that isn't quite as bad as we want to make them out to be. Like, I get they struggled versus Illinois last week. That was Illinois' Super Bowl, and I do think there was a fair amount of a trap game in Penn State looking ahead to this matchup. And let's not forget, too, who's the offensive coordinator at Penn State? That's Mike Yurcich. Used to be at Ohio State. He will have some tricks for that defense. He will have some things that I think he's holding back to be able to utilize versus that Ohio State defense that hasn't really been tested since they played Oregon. By the way, it's not like Oregon is the 85 Bears defensively. So this will be Ohio State's biggest challenge until they start going through the rest of the gauntlet here in the Big Ten East, Michigan at the end of the year in particular. So I'm going to be on the side of Penn State here, taking the 18.5 points. I do think Ohio State wins, but this is traditionally a much closer matchup than maybe people want to realize in this one, and a lower scoring game. I think both teams may struggle to find their rhythm in this one because of the familiarity and because of the talent and the matchup between the two teams.
I mean, you give him the finger waggle there, like at the very beginning.
No, it was the Mutombo, yeah. I literally was breaking them down for about 2 hours this morning. I was like, this is going to be a good game. I really do feel like this will be one of the better games we've seen in the Big Ten this year.
Look, the part where you guys agree, Penn State to go ahead and cover the 18.5 there. So recapping your picks, we do have one lock unity. They both like Florida there and the under, of course, in that Georgia-Florida game. Let's see, they both like the under and Ole Miss Auburn. Complete opposite sides when it comes to Michigan State, however. So Oklahoma did beat Kansas. It was not pretty. Not sure if you can trust them at all to cover the 20 at home against Texas Tech this week. We'll ask Brady and Danny what they have to say about that next. Welcome back. Getting ready for, what is this, week 9? We are now in college football, taking a look at some of the Big 12 ranked games. You got Texas Tech at Oklahoma. Of course, this one's interesting because Oklahoma barely beating Kansas. Texas Tech firing their head coach Matt Wells this week. Kansas State at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State barely losing to Iowa State. We'll see how they fare this week. So welcome back in. Brady, Quinn, Danny, Kanell here. All right, let's start with this one. Texas Tech at Oklahoma. Horrible. I didn't know what time the game was last weekend. I scheduled a spa appointment and I come out to horrific text messages. What is going on with your team? Oklahoma somehow still favored by 20 at home. The total here 66 and a hook. What do you do?
That's on you, all right? You must not have got the memo. Early start in Lawrence, Kansas. It's a sleepy place. They don't even play music there for their pregame. They want you to not
They
get
let
up for the
fans
game.
come in for free.
Look, credit Jason Bean and the rest of the Kansas team. I mean, they showed out. They came up to play. Almost shocked Oklahoma. I mean, really, the reality is too. If you go back and watch the Caleb Williams fourth down, play, incredible heads-up play on his part. That should have been stopped. Forward progress was stopped at that point. They shouldn't have allowed him to get to that point where he takes the football and extends the drive. But let's talk about this matchup. Kind of tough to predict what's going to be going on at Texas Tech with Matt Wells getting fired. I mean, this is still a winning football team. It's a team that, because they were out to a lead last week and lost to Kansas State, clearly that they're not putting forth the effort that the administration there was hoping for at Texas Tech. And maybe there's some other things that Matt Wells has said in his free time about living in Lubbock that didn't, strike people the right way. Still a good football team. I think this is a big number for an Oklahoma team that has struggled to stop the run, struggled to stop big plays from happening, and offensively, I think has sputtered at times. I mean, we saw last week for the first time, Caleb Williams showcased some of his scars throwing a bad interception. And again, Texas Tech and Matt Wells, he's built this program up to be competitive with some of the big dogs. So 20 points in this case, to me, way too much. I'm on the side of Texas Tech, but I do think you'll see a lot of scoring here. Let's not forget, Danny, this is the Big 12. There's not much defense played.
Yeah, I'm on the same side of you with the team. I have Texas Tech in the points here too, and I think I'm just going to keep following this kind of rule of thumb. Like, Oklahoma may have all this talent, and they might be one of the teams that's perennially been at the top of the Big 12, but they're not playing like the dominant force that they've been the last 5 or 6 years. They are playing down to the competition. Until I see that change, I'll go ahead and take the opponent every single time, especially when I'm getting 20. Maybe it's different. Maybe that was the wake-up call, but how many wake-up calls do they need on the season to dodge disaster before they actually show up for a game? So I'll take Texas Tech. The only thing I had trouble going with the over, and I actually took the under, is I struggle to see where Texas Tech puts up that many points against Oklahoma kind of to match, get the cover, and push the over. So I think they might slow it down. They're coming off a game where they had season lows in passing yards, total offense, and third down. They were just 2 for 10 last week against Kansas State. It's hard for me to back a Texas Tech offense just be going up and down the field and get a few. But maybe to your side, maybe all they need is 3 touchdowns and you get sort of a 40-something to 24 type of game. You get the cover and the over pushes. But in this one, I'll go ahead and take the Texas Tech Red Raiders in this spot. I think it's horrible that they fired Matt Wells after a 5-3 start. You're basically screwing over the players on that team by sending the coach off with 4 games left and a winning record. You're saying, we don't like the coach. We don't really care about you or the rest of the season. We're going to start looking towards the future. What message does that send to the seniors and upperclassmen on that team that aren't going to be around, throwing the towel in the season on Matt Wells and the rest of this year? So hopefully they rally around each other and say, oh, okay, it's us against the world, and they go out with a strong performance.
We'll go from Norman, a couple hours north, up to Stillwater. You got Kansas at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State here, barely losing to Iowa State, but they get a big number at home, 30.5. The total here, 54 and a hook. Brady, what do you think?
Well, it's a huge number. I think if you're comparing Oklahoma to Oklahoma State, I think Oklahoma's the better team. And look how tough Kansas played them last week. So granted, Stillwater, really tough place to play. This really comes down to how Kansas manages third down on offense. Can they stay on the field? Oklahoma State's the best third down defense in the Big Ten, and that's really going to be the tough point, for at least offensively, and how this game is decided. Ultimately, though, 30 points, I'm on the side of Kansas here. I think they've got enough playmakers. They're starting to believe that they are capable of knocking off some of the bigger programs right now in the Big 12. So I'll take the 30.5 points. But I also think there's a fair amount of scoring in this one, at least enough to get over that number at 54.5, which is kind of low considering Big 12 standards, Danny.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one on the side of Kansas. I mean, Jason Bean had a career day last week against Oklahoma. I don't know if I trust him to replicate that, where he had 74% completion rate, 246 yards, a touchdown. But I do like Kansas. I think the trend I've seen from Kansas, they're fighting and clawing for every single game, even if they're coming up short. Lance Leipold has this team in a better spot. I'm on the other side because I don't know if Oklahoma State with Spencer Sanders and Jalen Warren are going to be able to just roll up and down the field. Although against the 127th rush defense, maybe I should switch my pick now with Jack and go your way. But I'll go ahead and lean the under. I just think it'll be a lower scoring game.
Texas at number 16, Baylor. Texas, of course, had those two meltdowns, first against Oklahoma, then against Oklahoma State. They're coming off their bye week, so maybe some time to regroup there. Baylor, however, still in the race for the Big 12 championship. They're right there. They're favored by only 2.5 at home. The total here is 61.
I don't think a bye week for Texas is enough to fix their defensive issues. I mean, my God, the second half, this team has played awful defensively if you go back the last couple of games. And Baylor might be one of the more complete teams in the Big 12 when you look at them statistically. They're the number one offense in the Big 12 right now. I'm not sure how many people would realize that unless you turn on the tape and you watch Jerry Bohannon, you watch Abram Smith, and the way they move around the football and create some big plays. And defensively, they're tough. They're one of the best in the Big 12. So I think I love where Baylor's at right now. They've got a great opportunity to make a run to be playing in a couple of weeks versus Oklahoma at home, which will largely determine, kind of the path for them at least getting to the Big 12 championship game. So all the way to 2.5 points. I think if it gets outside that number to 3.5, 4, I'm on the other side of this one. I do think it will be a close game, but I'm also on the over. I think Texas will put up their points like they do. They're one of the tougher offenses to stop. But I also think Baylor will be cutting through that Texas defense like a Swiss Army knife all game long. So give me the over. I think I like that best of all these bets here, Danny.
I'm with you. I'm trying to find common ground here. I'm bummed we don't have more lock unities because I'm on Texas off the bye week. I think they figure things out. They're still a talented roster that Sark still is trying to figure out the right pieces to put there. Baylor hasn't been tested quite as much as Texas has, played a little bit of a tougher schedule. So I think they'll be ready for this kind of moment that they're in. Baylor's been a great story. Dave Aranda, year 2 with Gary Bohannon, has been fantastic through 7 games. 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, just 1 interception. But I think in a shootout style game, I'll trust Texas and Bijan Robinson a little bit more. So I'll take Texas, but I'm with you on the over.
You're looking for lock unity, Danny. I'm not sure. You may have it at this next one. Number 22, Iowa State at West Virginia. Iowa State, that incredible win against Oklahoma State there. They're getting 7 on the road. The total here, 47.5. Danny, what's your play in this one?
All right, so I'm going to go with West Virginia. Their season looked like it was on the brink. They go to TCU. They get a nice win. Now they're coming back home. Again, the trend of this season, I don't trust road favorites, especially when they're a touchdown or more, and I know Brock Purdy and Breece Hall and Xavier Hutchinson had kind of a breakout game against Oklahoma State, but now they have to back that up on the road. The game against Oklahoma State was still pretty close. I think you'll see a similar trend in this one. I think it'll be lower scoring because I don't trust either team to put up, prolific offensive numbers in this game. So I like the under, but I also like the home team in the West Virginia Mountaineers.
Lock unity, man. I'm right there with you every step of the way. I think this is going to be a tough challenge for Iowa State. Kind of felt like that was almost like their Super Bowl. They're like, hey, don't forget about us moment last week, being able to beat Oklahoma State at home, a tough physical match. Well, you're going to get the same thing here in West Virginia. Morgantown is no easy place to go to. Jared Daigie's been efficient with the football. They can make big plays when they need to. Letty Brown will carry the load at the running back position out of the backfield. And defensively, I think they can limit some of the upside or some of the bigger playability that we saw from Xavier Hutchinson and Brock Purdy and Kolar, the tight end. The biggest key, obviously, is stopping Breece Hall, and I think West Virginia is very much capable of that. So, low-scoring game. And look, if this number was Iowa State getting 3 points, I might be on that side because I do think they win this game. But I think they're in for a big-time scare with West Virginia at home playing them tough. So I'll go ahead and take the 7 points here, but play the under.
Danny wanted to lock unity, and there you go. That last one, West Virginia and Iowa State here. So recapping their picks, they both like Texas Tech to cover the 20 there in Norman against the Sooners there. They both like Kansas to cover on the road against Oklahoma State, and the over in Texas at Baylor. The Tar Heels are headed to South Bend to take on the Fighting Irish this weekend after Notre Dame easily beat USC this past weekend. We'll take a look at that in other games across the ACC next. All right, welcome back. Taking a look at some games we got across the ACC here. You get Virginia at BYU. Of course, you have a coach there going up against his old team, UNC Notre Dame. Brady, any doubt in your brain for Notre Dame this past weekend against USC?
But no, not against USC, not this week either.
And then the quarterback, that one Brady Quinn loves right now there in Miami at Pittsburgh. We'll get to that game in just a second. Let's welcome back Brady Quinn, Danny Kanell here. Let's start with North Carolina at Notre Dame. North Carolina coming up a bye. Of course, as we mentioned, they handled USC very easily there. Indy, just 3.5-point favorite at home. Total here 62.5. But you're not worried?
No, because this has been Vegas all year long with Notre Dame. They have underrated this team every single time. And I think I don't know if it's the fact they use a 2-quarterback system at time. You see Jack Cohn, you see Tyler Buckner, but they make it work, and they've been successful at that. Maybe it's because their All-American safety, Kyle Hamilton, will be out this week. However, if you noticed last week versus one of the better wide receivers in Drake London, yeah, he got his catches, he got his production. Kept them out of the end zone, though, and obviously it limited how much they were able to score. So they adjusted on the fly, and I think this is more of an issue of really the battle up front. Notre Dame's offensive line has got healthier and healthier. They're running the football more effectively. They're protecting Jack Cohn better, and I don't think that North Carolina defensive front presents much of an issue. And on the flip side, you've got Isaiah Foskey, who's tied for second in the country in sacks, along with the rest of the defensive front for Notre Dame that absolutely gets after it. And I think that's where the problems come in here for Sam Howell. They're going to have their big plays. They're going to get theirs, and that's in part because they're talented enough, but also because Notre Dame takes some risks on defense. But the reality is, I'm gladly going to lay the 3.5 points here. I think a more low-scoring game. If you've noticed, when Notre Dame gets up, they really start to control the game, milk the clock, and start to run the football effectively, and at times play a little bit bend but don't break, and force teams to have to go the long, hard way. So the under, to me, is the play, and lay the 3.5 points in ND.
All right, we're fighting on this one because my ACC boys, one of these days, are going to get Notre Dame. They were close in Tallahassee. They were close in Blacksburg. This might be the time. Notre Dame may win, but I think North Carolina does keep it closer. They got a lot of firepower, and Sam Howell coming off his worst game of the year. It was not pretty, 154 yards, season low, and an interception. I think he gets back right against this Notre Dame team, which is 94th in pass yards allowed. I think he gets back on track. Now, Kyron Williams also coming off his best game of the season for 138 and 2 touchdowns. I think he'll run like a sieve through North Carolina's defense. But Josh Downs on the outside is a weapon. I think North Carolina has some success moving down up and down the field. So give me the Tar Heels in those points and the over and a little more of a shootout game there in South Bend.
This just has to do with Notre Dame beating Florida State to open the season. It put Danny in such bad spirits. He will not get off the ACC bandwagon.
We can see the helmet again.
Well, because they're running the football and they're starting to win some games now. He's proud again.
I appreciate.
Hey, that win looks a lot better now with Florida State winning 3 in a row.
I appreciate your dedication, Dave.
I don't think we're hanging our hat on that win. I'm letting you know right now.
All right. Yeah. The next game we have Duke at Wake Forest here. Wake Forest ranked 13th right now, coming off that insane game against Army, 70-56. I did check. Both of you took the over. Congratulate. I wanted to check. I didn't
The over-under was set at 54 points.
It was 52.
They scored one over 120. It was ridiculous.
Almost triple. Wake is favored by 16.5 here, Danny. The total for this one is 70. Do you still take the over?
I do. Wake Forest is one of the most prolific offenses in the country. You mentioned the 70 piece they put on Army. This Duke team is really struggling. I think this, unfortunately, might be the end of the David Cutcliffe era there in Durham, as he might retire at the end of the year. And they've had one bright spot in Mateo Durant, their running back, who's second in the ACC, who I do think we saw Army run through Wake Forest defense. I think he'll be able to have some success, put up some points. But Sam Hartman continues to light it up through the air. He was super impressive last week, but he's been impressive all season long. So I'll go. Duke is just not a very good football team. Wake, I think they continue to have this historic run. The first time we've seen them ranked higher than 14th since 1947. They're having a historic run. So I like the Demon Deacons here playing against the Blue Devils.
Lock unity here, buddy. Look, Wake Forest has one of the more prolific passing attacks. When you look at the outside, too, teams trying to match up with Jaquiri Roberson and A.T. Perry, good luck, because Sam Hartman will take shots to them. He's a great and accurate downfield thrower, and those guys will go up high point the football and make big plays after. So that's the challenge for the Duke secondary. good luck with that. And by the way, the running backs kind of, when you watch Christian Beal-Smith and Justice Ellison, they're capable too. Those guys get out on the edge, or when they get to the second level, they'll make some guys miss and do something after it. Now, look, Wake Forest gave up a ton of points to Army. I'm going to give them a pass on this one, and I don't think Duke's able to do quite as much running the football because it's more of a unique scheme. Maybe if David Cutcliffe implements some triple option, because we saw the way the Wake Forest defense struggled with it, but it's tough to prepare for that in a week's time in season. Wake didn't handle it well, but they didn't need to. They blew them out when it was all said and done. So I'm with you, Danny. Lock Unity, high-scoring game. Lay the points here with Wake.
Miami at number 17, Pitt. I heard this tweet over the weekend. I don't know who needs to hear this. Had been on this bandwagon for a while. Kenny Pickett needs a lot more Heisman Trophy love coming from one Brady Quinn there. So Pitt favored by 9.5, the total 61.
Yeah, my only concern with this is if Miami's found something. Tyler Van Dyke played phenomenal last week, 4 touchdown passes in Miami, surprising everyone, beating NC State. It's a good ACC football team. And if Pitt maybe kind of won their Super Bowl, beating a Clemson team that, yeah, is having a down year, but it's still a brand. It's still Clemson. And so I do wonder if they're going to have the same type of energy coming into this one. But I'm betting on Kenny Pickett stepping up. Look, he came back for a reason, and he's done nothing but improve his draft stock and give his team a legitimate chance of winning an ACC championship and maybe finding their way up into the college football playoff. We're seeing a lot of defensive highlights, and we saw a lot of that versus the Clemson offense that's struggling. But the keys really is this. It's Kenny Pickett finding Jordan Allison, Taysir Mack. I mean, these guys will stretch the field, and they'll get chunks in a heartbeat on you. And the offensive line is playing at a high clip too. So I'm going to go ahead and say this one, you go ahead and lay the points. I'm on the side of Pitt. I do think it'll be a lower scoring game, though. Pitt's good defensively. Miami's kind of hit or miss. I don't see them scoring quite as much in this one.
Isn't it crazy how we've come so far in just a couple months of the college football season? Because preseason, you would have circled this game as a trap game or an upset alert for the Miami Hurricanes, who were supposed to be at the top of the division. Instead, Miami's playing the role of spoiler with nothing to play for except pride and to hopefully, for their chances to ruin Pitt's opportunity to win the division and play for an ACC championship. Pitt's good. I like him. I'm totally on board with you and Kenny Pickett, who, by the way, in their loss this season, had 6 touchdown passes and 1 interception. So you can't pin that on him. He is outstanding. I love him. I also am really bullish on Tyler Van Dyke for the Hurricanes, which is why I think Miami might be able to keep it closer in this one. That's a pretty big spread. Do I trust Pitt that much yet? I don't, but I'm with you on the under. Conditions could come into play. Supposed to be some bad weather in Pittsburgh. How does Miami travel playing in colder weather? I think it could be a little bit of an uglier game where I trust Pitt to win, but I pick them probably closer to a touchdown than 10 points.
We get Virginia at number 25, BYU. So BYU back in the top 25. First-time Bronco Mendenhall will be back in Provo to face the team he coached for 11 seasons there. BYU favored by 2.5 at home, and the total 64. Danny, what's your play?
ACC, baby, all the way. I'm going to take the Virginia Cavaliers to go on the road, play for their coach who's returning home. I think it is going to be an emotional scene for this Bronco Bowl there. And it's going to be an interesting matchup with Brendan Armstrong, one of the better quarterbacks in the country who has been outstanding. And Virginia quietly has been putting together a really nice season against Tyler Algier, a running back for BYU, who has been outstanding on the season as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Virginia Cavaliers, but I also think you'll see some points in this one. Nobody has really slowed down Virginia's passing attack, but no one has slowed down Tyler Algier, and I don't think Virginia does either. So I think it'll be a higher scoring game, but I think Virginia comes out on top.
I'm on the opposite side of you on this one, pretty much in every way. And it's in part because, look, BYU playing at home, at altitude, tough place to play. I know they're familiar with Bronco Mendenhall and Kalani Sitake, the head coach for BYU, so should be a little bit of a cat and mouse game. To me, though, I think this is a game that BYU will look to control on the ground, as you see some highlights from their rushing attack here now, but it's more defensively. That 3-3-5 defense can be tough for a prolific passing attack like Brennan Armstrong and UVA encompasses. And so there could be some interceptions, there could be some, misreads here or there. It's tough to go up against, and obviously they're preparing for it all week, but a little different when you see it in person. So I think potentially some turnovers, a lack of big playability from this UVA passing attack ends up spelling a close win by BYU. So I'm going to lay the 2.5 points here, and I think a lower scoring game Love the under.
Complete opposite sides there, recapping their picks. They're also on total opposite sides when it comes to Notre Dame at North Carolina. We do get lock Unity Wake Forest in the over, and they both like the under in Miami at Pitt. So Cincinnati managed to eke out a win against Navy, but it was the first time they had a game decided by a single digit this season. So can they cover the 24.5 against Tulane? That's next. Welcome back. Walking you through ranked games for Week 9. Taking a look at some AAC and Pac-12 games there. Cincy, a huge road favorite against Tulane. SMU beat Tulane last weekend, 55-26, but it's basically a pick-em between them and Houston this weekend. The Cougars 6-1 so far. We've got Brady Quinn, Danny Kanell, Amanda Guerra here with you on set. Number 2, Cincinnati against Tulane. Cincinnati only won by 7 against Navy, the closest game for them so far this season. Favored by 24.5 right now. The total 62 in this game. What do you think?
Well, I think Cincinnati's going to roll this one. Not the same challenge this week versus the Tulane offense. I mean, Michael Pratt and Tulane will score some points in this one. Not enough to hit the over. I love the under in this one. This is back where Cincinnati says, hey, look, faced the triple option team last week, struggled with it, much like Wake did struggling with Army. That was a common denominator we saw this last weekend. They're going to get back on track. I think Desmond Ritter gets back on track, takes advantage of some matchups on the outside. It's really been Jerome Ford leading the rushing attack and leading the Cincinnati Bearcats offense the past few weeks. So I love Cincinnati. I'm going to go ahead and lay the points here, but I think the under is the better play.
All right, we got some lock unity on this one. I think that was a wake-up call for Cincinnati last week, and it was a great thing for Cincinnati that everybody was watching Oklahoma almost lose to Kansas, because I think their game against Navy kind of flew under the radar, and good for them because the voters didn't take notice. They dropped Oklahoma but didn't drop Cincinnati. But this is your get-right game for Desmond Ritter and Jerome Ford. I think they'll be able to control the line of scrimmage. And Tulane has been really bad. They've been on a rough stretch. They've allowed 5 games, allowing 40-plus points. But I don't think their offense puts up much against Cincinnati's defense. So I'm on the under, too. So lay them with the Bearcats and take the under.
Number 19, SMU at Houston. SMU still undefeated in the season, 7-0. Houston, though, 6-1 there. They are favored by 1 at home. It's basically a pick-em. The total here, 62 and a hook. Danny, what's your play?
So I'm going to go with the trend of college football. We've seen upsets all over the place, and it's actually not even an upset. It's the home team. I'm going to take Houston here. You mentioned the 6 games in a row. Clayton Tune has been outstanding playing in Dana Holgerson's offense. And Tanner Mordecai has been great, but he's pulled off a little bit lately. Ultimately, though, I think both offenses have a ton of success. I think you'll see a ton of points in this one, but I'll go ahead and take Houston, who really was dealt a bad hand last year with COVID. They missed a ton of games, had to rework their schedule. It's almost like they lost an entire season. They have been really quietly having a great season. So I'll take Houston to beat SMU at home in a shootout game where they score a ton of points.
Well, one thing we agree on is the over, and that is no doubt the player. With this only being 1 point, you could really make a case for either side. Danny kind of laid it out in regards to the quarterback play. I'm on the side of SMU, though. If you're going to give me a point, I'll gladly take it. I think Tanner Mordecai has been phenomenal this year. It's been one of the more underrated programs, and I think they will be able to put up points versus Houston and Dana Holgerson. But again, this game is really more to me about the high-scoring offenses. That's where you lay the bet here is the over. But we're on opposite sides here. I'm going to go ahead and take the point in SMU.
Colorado at number 7, Oregon. Oregon kind of a lot like Oklahoma. It doesn't matter who they're playing. It's going to be a close game. They haven't had a game decided by more than 7 points so far this season. But they are getting 24 here at home, Danny. The total, 49. What's your play?
So I'll go ahead and take Oregon in this one. I know Cal is not very good, but Colorado is having an atrocious year this season. And I think Oregon maybe found some confidence that was lacking as they were kind of sputtering after the Stanford loss. Kayvon Thibodeau looked outstanding. He finally looks like he's getting further and further removed from that ankle injury. He absolutely dominated that game. And maybe what they realized with Joe Moorhead as the offensive coordinator is Anthony Brown, he may not be able to throw all over you, but he can run all over you because they got him going in the running game with Travis Dye. So I think they'll establish the line of scrimmage here against Colorado, which I do think leads to a lower scoring game. So I think Oregon's defense shows up. I think they shut down Colorado. I think Oregon wins easily. So I'll take the Ducks in the under.
I'm with you on the under. I actually think Colorado's going to have a hard time scoring, bottom line. This Oregon defense has some big-time playmakers, and that's where the mismatch will be. You talked about the rush attack with Anthony Brown. Anthony Brown showcased, though, he is capable of throwing the football around. I think we saw that, from time to time versus UCLA. When they needed him to make a throw, he did. So This is going to be a game where I think he's going to have to, based on the construct of the Colorado defense. But low-scoring game, you lay the 24 points. Colorado just can't keep pace.
All right, let's recap their picks here because we got a couple lock unities in this one. Lock unity with Oregon and the under. Lock unity Cincinnati and the under as well. And both like the over in SMU at Houston. Still to come, we have the best of the rest ranked games this season, including Iowa at Wisconsin. It is the battle for the Heartland Trophy. That's next. All right, taking a look at the best of the rest when it comes to college football games this week. Brady, I know you like the fact that there's the Heartland Trophy. That's a bowl between Iowa and Wisconsin. Fresno State, San Diego State, they are playing for an oil can trophy.
You'll be there.
This weekend. I will be there.
You'll be there.
A lot of interesting trophies in this one. So let's go through some of these picks there, starting with number 9, Iowa at Wisconsin. Wisconsin favored by 3.5 at this one. The total, it is tiny, 36.5, and both of you are taking the under here. Why?
Yeah, it's Iowa, Wisconsin. Have you watched these teams this year? No, I mean, honestly, it's a credit to their defense. Both Iowa and Wisconsin are two of the stingier defenses in all of college football. Both teams like to run the football or establish the run, and that's kind of the strength, obviously, of each of those defenses, too. So I think, look, low-scoring game. That's a really low over-under, so I'm a bit concerned about that. But Vegas, or I should say our odds makers, have constantly been on the side of Wisconsin this year. In games that they've been favored, and to the best of my knowledge, I only think they've covered once. And so this is a case where I'm going to take the 3.5 points. I know they got back on track last week, running the football, a little bit more running back by committee, though Malusi is their starter. I just haven't seen enough in the passing game with Graham Mertz to make me feel comfortable that they're going to be able to do much versus that Iowa secondary that's been oh so stingy. So bottom line is low scoring, close game. I'll take the 3.5, but I think the under is the play here.
Lock unity. You're right. Wisconsin last week got the game where they actually made Vegas look smart for favoring them against Purdue. I was wrong on that one, but I don't think we'll be wrong on this one. I think Iowa's the better football team here. And they're begging you to take the over. Don't fall for it. This game is going to be disgusting. And I think you're being a little bit too nice to the quarterback play. This is game manager city. And Paul Chryst has even got to the point where he said, you know what, Graham Mertz, we're not even going to let you throw it 10 times. I think he only had 8 attempts last week in their game. They are dedicated to the run against this Iowa defense. I think Iowa's defense clearly is better than Purdue's. Spencer Petras has kind of had a little bit of a setback since started the season pretty strong, but then when they've needed him to throw more, has kind of regressed to a little bit more of a game manager. He's got 6 picks on the year, including a career worst 4 interceptions against Purdue. So I'm going to go ahead and take the under here with you as well, but I do think the Hawkeyes have slightly more talent, so I'll go ahead and take them in the points.
To Danny's point, Graham Mertz 5 of 8 for 52 yards last week, I believe.
Okay.
Yep.
There we go.
Yep.
We get number 12, Kentucky at Mississippi State. Danny, Kentucky getting the 1 on the road there. The total here is 47. Where do you go?
So I'm going to go with Mississippi State here. I like Mike Leach's squad. Will Rogers having a great season. They're able to put up points almost against anybody, which is another reason I like the over. I do think the SEC West is better top to bottom than the SEC East. I think Mississippi State's been tested more. I mean, they are a team that beat Texas A&M. They've had some success. They've been incredibly up and down, though. Also lost to Memphis. But I think they'll put up a fight against Kentucky. It's at home. I think the cowbells will be ringing. And I think Will Levis will be able to put up some points against Mississippi State's defense, too. So I'll take Mississippi State. The home team is the underdog, and I'll take the over.
No, there's something fishy about that over-under to me. That's why I'm playing the under here. I think Kentucky's defense will get after Will Rogers and the Mississippi State passing attack. They're going to control the game by running the football with Chris Rodriguez and Will Levis, and also throwing in Wan'Dale Robinson in there from time to time. So I love a low-scoring game in this one, and I'll lay the 1 point. I just think Kentucky is the overall better football team. You can't give Mark Stoops enough credit for the way he's built them, and oh, by the way, they are coming off the bye.
You get Fresno State at number 21, San Diego State. The battle for the oil can, as I told you. It's
yes.
A very nice trophy there. San Diego State favored by just 1 at home as well. So many close games when it comes to Vegas this weekend. The total here is 45 and a hook. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a battle of which style of football is going to win out. You get the rushing attack from San Diego State and solid defense, so they're able to stop Jake Haener and this prolific passing attack, or the big plays end up hitting out, and you force San Diego State out of what they want to do, which is run the football, eat up the clock, shorten the game. So I'm on the side of Fresno State here. I really like what they've been able to do this season. I think this is one of those teams that's not a Power 5 team that no one wants to see in a bowl game, that no one wants to have to go up against because of their big playability in this pass attack with Jake Haener. I'm sure there's Washington Husky fans right now who wish they had Jake Haener back on the roster the way he's looked this year. So I'm going to go ahead and be on the side of Fresno State taking the point. But I think Danny would agree with me. Low-scoring game in this one, right?
Yeah, I'm on the under on that one. You think is a team with a couple wins against Pac-12 teams, and I know Fresno State went into UCLA and beat them too. I think this is going to be a great game. We should ask Amanda, as the face of the Mountain West for CBS Sports Network. She's intimately familiar with all these teams, as she does a great job covering them. But I do think the one thing that we'll see is San Diego State run the football. But they're also one of the more balanced teams in the country. They're the only FBS team that's top 10 in scoring defense, yards per play allowed, and rush defense, and opponent's third down conversion percentage. How's that straight from the game notes to find a way to sell your program? But I still think they're a really good team. And it doesn't matter if they've shuttled back and forth between Lucas Johnson and Jordan Brookshire. As long as Greg Bell's been in the backfield, they have been committed to the run, and it has worked. So I think they'll keep the ball out of Jake Haener's hands. So I think they get the win, but I'm with you on the under.
Danny, are you back in studio this weekend?
I'll be back in studio.
10:30 Eastern kickoff. I know.
There you go.
The last one went into overtime. I felt so bad. Danny got off air at like 2 a.m.
This one could. This could be a close game. I mean, obviously the spread says it, but it should be a great game.
Every game I've done with San Diego State has gone into overtime this year. We'll see, Danny. All right, we get Troy at number 24, Coastal Carolina. Coastal, Danny, coming off their first loss of the season last Thursday to App State. They are favored here by 18.5. The total's 52. Are you still going with Coastal Carolina, Danny?
I'm going to get off the bandwagon. Their schedule gets a lot tougher. They were the 130th strength of schedule was their opponents leading into that game against App State. I think they got a little bit exposed. They're not the team they were last year. I think they still win the game at home, but 18.5 is too many points for me. And I think Troy, who's won 2 games in a row after a little bit of a rough start, I think they'll put up some points as well. So give me Troy and the over.
Well, first off, let's look at how Troy won last week, okay? It took 3 interceptions and a pick 6 and then running out the clock to be able to win. So I'm a little suspect on Troy right now. I know they're good defensively. Offensively, though, not quite the same team we're used to seeing. But you hit on it. Coastal Carolina's defense isn't quite the same, even though statistically they're one of the best in the Sun Belt. Bottom line is they come back home after playing a tough road game versus App State, and I think they get the win, and I think they cover what is this massive spread. I do think it'll end up being a low-scoring game. I see Coastal scoring a lot more than I do Troy. So lay the points and play the under.
Opposite sides in that one, but we do have at least one lock unity pick here with Iowa and the under. They're also on opposite sides with Mississippi State and Kentucky there, but they say take the under when it comes to Fresno State at San Diego State. They're your lock unity picks, gentlemen, and there's a line in the rundown for just confetti. So I hope we get it in the next 10 seconds here. There it is.
Yeah.
That's the best part of the show. Danny Kanell, Brady Quinn. I'm Amanda Garrett. Thanks so much for joining us. I like the confetti even at the very end.
It's just raining down. It won't stop raining now.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.